Mike. Hi.
Hey, Stuart.
I got you at last, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry about that, man. We're having problems with my Skype at my end, so I've had to kind of come out, come back in, come out. So I thought it was kind of destined we weren't going to get to talk to each other after the last few weeks.
There we go. Now I got you. I see you now.
You are a hard man to tie down, man. It's just.
Oh, man, I am so sorry about that.
It's been crazy, yeah. I mean, in fact, I do thank you for fitting me in, because it has been, for anybody that doesn't know, and I've told a few of my friends, I've been trying to get hold of you for it, and nobody believes me. It's like, yeah, I'm sure Mike Dopud is going to talk to you, but no. And then finally, it's taken about 3 or 4 weeks, hasn't it? Really, because you've either been really busy or you've been super diva. I think you've been busy. I think that's kind of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm known as the diva. Let me tell you. That's what he calls me. No, it's been one of those things, crazy busy, as well as my wife had broken her foot. I guess about now it's going on 13 weeks, 14 weeks.
Right.
And she can't put any. So I'm driving. I'm doing all the kids stuff, driving them to and from, and then all of a sudden I have a meeting to go downtown for a new pilot. So it was just crazy. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can't make it back on time. So, but we're here. We made it.
You made that. Well, I do thank you for fitting me in. So I know you have been crazy busy. I'll talk about a couple of things. So, the reason why I really want to speak to you is the film that I saw a few weeks ago, which we'll talk about in a little while, the Virtual Revolution, which is incredible, really good. I was looking on your IMDb thing and I don't know how accurate it is. I'm assuming it's pretty accurate, but something like 167 acting credits alone. Is that sound about right?
I think so. I mean, I don't know how they. I guess. When you're on a show too, sometimes I guess that all adds as one or whatever.
Yeah, you don't keep count.
Exactly, big parts, weren't exact huge roles. So
you don't keep a count on your wall. Then that's another one. That's another one.
No.
So how did you get into the acting thing? Because am I right in saying that you were kind of a bit of an athlete back in college and stuff? Yeah.
Yes. Ironically enough, acting was something I've always loved, and it always goes back. I always equate it to my brother, who's 7 years older than I am. He used to be into B movies like Mad Max, those types of movies, Escape from New York.
Oh, God, love those, yeah.
And this was back in the day of obviously the new VHS recorders and such.
Yeah.
I used to watch them with him, and I was always fascinated, specifically with Mad Max. That was the movie for me that really resonated with me and made me want to be an actor.
Right.
But growing up in Montreal, poor immigrant family wasn't something that you aspire to be. So it was just something I had, I guess, on the back burner. Eventually I looked into it and started doing it.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned Mad Max, because I mean, it's been an obsession for mine for years. I was lucky enough to speak to Vernon Wells not so long ago. It was in the second Road Warrior, where he played.
Yes.
And he was telling some stories about that, and it's absolutely fabulous stuff, and it's something that I'll probably rewatch again and again and again. So Montreal. So what's the film industry in terms of? Because I know Vancouver, and there's quite a big sort of industry these days, isn't there, in terms of TV and stuff that's filmed around in that area as well.
Vancouver has been great. A lot of things are being filmed here. I know we had a lull between the Olympics for like 2-3 years, 4 years or so, between 2010 and say 2014. It started to get slow. But at that point I'd moved to Los Angeles and just going back and forth. But yeah, Vancouver's a great film community. And I think after, 25, 30 years, so a lot of crew members that are really good.
Yeah.
And I think eventually there's a point where there's a lot of people, a lot of the actors, a lot of the crew members are really good. So I think that's why they keep coming. Obviously the dollar has something to do with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember also, some producers saying, look, if the dollar hits 80 cents, there's no way all the U.S. productions are going to pull out, but they're still here. So, and they were on par. It was on par, and actually the Canadian dollar was even more.
So are you based then in is it kind of in between LA and Vancouver, or is it mainly back in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mainly Los Angeles. It's where most of my work comes from. But being Canadian, I definitely end up working in Canada more.
Yeah. What's that like in terms of? I mean, obviously, I'm not particularly familiar in terms of the rivalry between Canada and America. I suppose it's, what do you feel as an outsider in LA as a Canadian, or do you feel part of the whole thing now?
Not anymore. I know enough people in Los Angeles that it's great.
Yeah.
I have to say, when I first started in the year 2000, when I first started going down and auditioning and such, I would hear a lot more of the negative feedback from some of the directors and producers as far as not wanting to cut and losing all the work in Los Angeles, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
But now it's not Vancouver that's taking all the work. It's literally, North Carolina, New York, and the rest of the world.
I was going to say, there seems to be a huge amount of, wherever you look now, particularly in Americans, is a lot of British actors. I mean, whenever you look at it, it's The Walking Dead's half British cast. You've got all sorts. It's like we're just retaking the colonies almost.
Right.
You were a stuntman as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And again, it was one of those things that I want to get in the film industry by any means necessary. And I played hockey, some high-level hockey, as well as some high-level football. And I was playing hockey with a stunt coordinator. And he saw what I could do on the ice, I guess, and said, well, wait a second. You've obviously played some professional hockey, or at least close. And I said, yes, I have. And I said, well, I'm also in the film industry. I was trying to get in as an actor. He said, well, you ever thought about maybe stunt acting, maybe doing, smaller roles with action involved? And I was a bit of a fighter in hockey, so you have that sort of ability to bridge that to film.
Yeah.
And it sort of worked. And I guess it worked because I started getting hired, and people, I guess, liked my work. So I started working more and more. And then I was studying as well. But acting was one of those things where it takes a little longer sometimes to get. And stunt-wise, I got in right away, and things started working within a year or so. I started working regularly.
Yeah. So going back to the hockey for a minute, so were you one of those troublemakers on the ice? Were you the one that liked a little bit of a,
I like the physical aspect, but I wasn't an instigator. How's that? I was.
You were a reactor.
I would show up like if you got. But my fights were always, they weren't like a part of the show. It was always, when I had fights, it was because we legitimately were upset at each other or whatever. Yeah. So it was that kind of thing.
I mean, hockey's kind of, for you Canadians, it's a religion, isn't it? I mean, I know that, we to a certain extent we have a league over here, and there's a bit of a tradition over here of hockey, but only quite limited. But I mean, I do love to watch it, and I used to go and watch my local team here in the UK. But for you guys, it's a different level, isn't it?
It's a religion. It literally is. If it's very rare you'll find a Canadian that hasn't played hockey.
So what would happen if you don't win the gold medal again in the Olympics now? I mean, humiliation? Would it be national humiliation or?
I don't think at this point, because the argument will be it's not all our best players, or our best players aren't.
Yeah, because I'm right in saying that the league hasn't released. They haven't released any players. Is that right?
No, the NHL isn't. Yeah, they have no play. I mean, Team Canada has all guys that played in the NHL at some point.
Right, okay.
And right now, most of them are playing in Switzerland or in Europe.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they're still a good team. They're still a great team, but it's not, I guess, a shoo-in anymore. But, the world has gotten so good at hockey. I mean, Russia's always been great, but the Czechs are great. Finland, Sweden, everybody's really good. So it's not a walk in the park anymore.
But it would be a national humiliation. Be honest, it would be.
Probably.
In terms of the stunt work, what films?
Here and there would okay.
What films did you work on as a stuntman then? What some big films? Am I right in saying I did hear somewhere in the kind of bit of research you're doing, 300 you might have been in?
Yeah. 300, Rollerball, Planet of the Apes, and a lot of these roles that I got on these movies were like Day After Tomorrow. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones were. Because a lot of times the second unit director would need like someone that could do the dialogue and do the action. Would be great if they could do both. And fortunately, they thought of me, and so I ended up getting a lot of roles on these movies. And they're not necessarily huge roles, but usually they're memorable. And then after doing that, that's when people started realizing, saying, "Well, wait a second, you can actually do more than a couple lines. You can actually do the dialogue." And then they realized, "Oh my God, he does plays. He's doing this. He's doing, you know." So I think that was one of those things where, as an actor, was tough because casting directors would pigeonhole into this, you know, the cop number one.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I can remember seeing you in a few years ago now would be, I can't remember which one it was now, but one of the Stargate series. Was it Universe? I think you were in.
I was in Universe regularly, and Stargate Atlantis was one of the episodes I did called The Runner. And I played a tracker, which is like Jason Momoa's character on the show. And for whatever reason, that resonated with a lot of people. So all of a sudden after that, it seemed like, wait a second, this guy can do this, I think. So I mean, getting more.
I mean, so you're in the kind of a series of sci-fi series that, you know, sort of big news in terms of, you know, big wide audience. What were the fans like with you? You said it resonated. I mean, you know, because we sci-fi fans can be a wee bit what's the word, passionate, I think. So what was the reaction like? Were you expecting, you know, the reaction that you got?
No, because I had really no idea. I mean, you hear the stories about the conventions and all that, but until I started getting regular roles. But I mean, if it wasn't for sci-fi fans, I wouldn't be working as much. I mean, it's because of a lot of the sci-fi fans. I believe that the feedback has been great, so I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky. And I wasn't a sci-fi person to begin with, but then I look back and I say, well, wait a second. I loved like Mad Max and Blade Runner and those type, the more post-apocalyptic stuff. And I think it was Star Trek I wasn't really into at first, but now I've grown to have this great appreciation for sci-fi. It's a great to be in.
What's it like being at the cons then? How did you find that the first one that you did, or, you know, subsequently? Pressure, great, strange, weird? What?
It was fun. I just felt it was weird for me to have other people sort of nervous to speak to me. So that to me was like, why? You know, it's just me. So that was kind of interesting. But then, you know, I remember sitting down with a sci-fi fan and asking him, saying, well, what do you think? Why do you do these things? Why do you come to conventions? Why? And he basically explained to me, he said, this is their escape. They love this world, and it really made sense to me. So.
I mean, because of that, or like you say, linked to that, then you seem to pop up in, well, in sci-fi or let me think now. Arrow, I've seen you in. Dark Matter, you've been in. The Strain, I think you've been in as well. Yes. So you're kind of making this sort of career niche out of, you know, sort of, you know, regular roles in these series. What was? I mean, Dark Matter is probably one of my favourites of the lot of those. I think you're in about 5-6 episodes of that. What was that like? Because it was quite set by that point, wasn't it? The series and the cast and everything. Yeah,
no, it was great. I knew about Dark Matter from day one when they were the concept was, you know, being created and shopped around to see if they'd get picked up. Joe Malazzi, who's always been great with me from Stargate, he approached me about the show, and there's a couple things that happened at the beginning which we weren't able to get worked out, but I was luckily they wanted me to be part of it. So and I wanted to be part of it too, because I had read the first script, like, you know, years and years ago. So it was really I was really lucky that they wanted me to be a part of it. And I think that we were having some talks about if Dark Matter were to continue about my character, but unfortunately got canceled.
Yeah, so. I mean, there was quite a bit of a sort of backlash over here regarding that, because a lot of us felt it had a lot of life left in it. It's just one of those unfortunate things where I know it's a way of the business, isn't it? But you know.
Well, it's weird because it's not as if the ratings were terrible or anything like that. So I think, you know, sometimes new people come into, you know, there's new presidents of networks, and there's always different things behind the scenes, which I never understood. Just like how Stargate Universe got canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
Finding our footing, and then we didn't find out. I found out on Twitter that we got canceled.
Oh man, that's brutal. That's not particularly good, is it?
And I mean, it was the producers as well. Like, I'm not saying they did. It was like the network essentially.
Yeah.
didn't notify, and I don't know how that happened or why it happened. I think they said it was a mistake, but regardless, that was how we found out. All of us found out.
That's not good. That's not good. What about Arrow? What was the experience of working on Arrow?
Arrow was fun. It was great. It's Stephen Amell has such a tough job. He's in, I think, pretty much every scene, and he does the action, and he gets involved. So his time is very precious. But he was more than respectful with me, so I enjoyed myself. And David Nichol was great. I had a great time working with him. David and I now we have our regular lunches when we can. We try to. I love him. He's great. And Stephen's so busy doing his thing, but he was great to work with, really fun. So I have nothing bad to say at all. It was nothing but positive. And I knew, when you work, I always say I'm from Vancouver. I'm from Montreal originally, but my career started in Vancouver essentially. And when you see the crew and you see the cast and the DPs and the camera operators and a lot of the guys that you've worked with, and they seem happy to see you. So that's always a fun thing.
What's it like as an actor having to? Because I mean, you regularly do, like I say, guest appearances in series, often for quite a few episodes at a time. What's it like fitting in to often groups that are quite well knitted? I mean, is it a nerve-wracking thing? Is it exciting? Does it keep?
The first day, I'm probably a little more quiet. The first day I get on set, just because I don't know what the mood is or what the energy of the show is. But 9 times out of 10, it's good. It's fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are so busy they don't have a chance to talk, so that you just do your scene and you move on. And the directors too. I've had that before where it didn't take till the 3rd episode where I actually had a conversation with the directors or the producers because you get so busy. But everybody's been great. I just had that with the 100. And they were just fantastic. They took me on as if I was a regular. So no, I've been lucky. And Stargate Universe was really good about that.
Yeah.
And Dark Matter too. I've been very fortunate that way. I
mean, this is probably a stupid question, but do you like being able to do that? I mean, obviously you probably loved, I don't know, maybe like a permanent series or whatever. But do you like the freedom it gives you maybe to go from place to place, work to work, or would you prefer? No, I want the security of a 10-year series or something.
I would love the security of a 22-episode TV show. Trust me. And I don't know why it hasn't happened. Because I've had producers are like, "Oh, you're perfect for this," and things would work out, or the show would get canceled, whatever. But that's definitely the goal. I think having kids too would be nice to stay in one area for a little while.
True.
But look, as long as I'm working, at the end of the day, if I'm working, it's good. So, and it's interesting too because you get to play all these other roles.
Yeah.
So, and luckily, I get to play stuff from Russian Godfathers to police detectives to doctors. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, I'm probably imagining this, but I do seem to remember to think of you playing a number of accents. I mean, your Serbian descent, is that correct? Yes. So I'm assuming the Eastern European accent comes pretty easily, or
yes, absolutely. It does, and then certain people I know a lot of Russians as well, and other Serbians or Croatians and different dialects, sometimes from different areas, and then I just usually go back to people I knew, such as like my dad's buddies or whatever, and sometimes I create characters that way. And so it's always fun. And obviously the Eastern European accent comes easier because, my parents, they didn't speak English at all. So, or very little. So to me, it was always French and Serbian.
Right. Okay.
And so in that regard, you're able to, draw upon all these different accents and such. So
you're still quite lucky though.
It works.
Yeah. I mean, I'm my dad's Scottish, my mum's English, my grandparents are Irish. But to be honest, I couldn't do an accent to save my life. So it doesn't, just because you've got that, you're still quite lucky you can actually do them, so.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, I still have to work at it.
Yeah.
I still have to read it through. And it was funny because on Arrow, I'm always worried about speaking in other languages just because I don't want to dummy it. I want to make it as authentic as possible. And then after a couple of times on Arrow, then they started giving me more dialogue, and I was like, "Oh, I work at it though. I do have to work at it." and even with Serbian sometimes. I'm on a show called Power.
Yeah.
And I play Serbian American, and we decide to make the character American. However, he speaks fluent Serbian, which is great. But they wanted him to sound very educated, and sometimes my Serbian's a little more pedestrian, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I've seen you in Power as well. Are you in are you filming at the moment then, Power? Or
yes, yeah.
Because I think we're up here in the UK. I think it's on Netflix over here. I think, crikey, season 3 or 4 that we're up to now.
Okay, so yeah, season 4. I started in season 4.
Yeah.
Last 2 of the last, I think, 4 episodes, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
and then I'm in season 5 as well.
Power's a great series. Power's just it's violent. It's
yeah.
You must be one of the few actors who probably keeps their clothes on as well. Maybe, I don't know, because like everybody sees it. It's just like, but it's a great series.
No, it is. But I have to tell you, the writing, and that's another show where Joseph Sikora, just really great with me from day one.
Yeah.
The producers were great, and so as an actor coming onto a show, sometimes, especially a show like Power, it's all lots of testosterone, a lot of big, like from 50 Cent to Omari Hardwick to. So for me, they really, took me in. So it was great.
The dialogue's great as well. I mean, the writing, you're right, is incredible. And it's I've watched every episode so far, and I'm glad to see that you're still in it, which is great.
And especially when people get killed off all the time.
I was going to say you've done well to survive so far, because people do die on a regular basis. So, I watched Virtual Revolution, or 2047 Virtual Revolution, whichever way. It's an independent film. For those that haven't seen it, if you want to describe it, it's a kind of cyberpunk, sci-fi, dystopian film. Explain it to those that haven't seen it. Besides what I've just said, how would you sell it?
Well, I just think, and in some regard, it's funny, obviously, there's an homage to Blade Runner and such in the movie, but it's funny how some people at first were like, "Well, it's very, it's very Blade Runner-ish or whatever." And I said, "Yeah, but how many movies were like that? Not many." And it was more of an homage than anything else. And Guy Roger, he combined a bunch of different elements from very much in animes as well, and these different video games, and so I just think it's an interesting movie, especially for an independent film. I thoroughly believe, when I read the script, I thought, wow, if we can pull this off, I think we've got a good movie here.
Yeah, I mean, visually it's stunning, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the budget was. I can't imagine it was huge, but in terms of visual effects, it looks fabulous. It looks really cool, and you're pretty good in it as well. So it's.
I thought they did such an amazing job with it, and that goes to I have to say Guy Roger again, because he, and this was a passion project of his, and he was able to pull it together, and they spent money. I think they spent more than they wanted to, but again, at the end of the day, compared to some, it's nowhere near 100 million. I think it was only like 3 million, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And to be able to pull that off for that little money. And that's what we were talking about. I said, some of the scenes would have been, I think, a little more dynamic. And he goes, yeah, but I couldn't afford to do this guy for all the scenes to go to take the scene from a cafe to, for lack of a better example, from the cafe to the street, from the cafe. And he said, it would have been great to do that, but we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
We couldn't. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good fight scenes in there as well. Did you do the fight scenes yourself?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of they're quite hard hitting stuff. I think there's one where you practically get the crap beaten out of you, and then I think your line after it's something like, "Well, that was fun" or something. That's quite a brutal fight. So that was you. That was you doing that.
It was me. Yeah, it was me. I can't lie. It was me. I ended up getting an injury on one of the last days of shooting, and it wasn't necessarily because of the movie as much, just wear and tear of being. But it was one of those where I didn't have a double on that show, so so that was.
And was that actually?
Too, I think he knows that I do that, so I think he wanted as to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah, I suppose it's a good way of saving money as well. You've got a proper stuntman type thing who can do the whole thing, so that works out okay, I suppose. Was it actually filmed in Paris then? Did you film?
Yeah.
Was it filmed there? Oh, right, okay.
Yes.
I wonder.
It was amazing too. What an experience that was.
Yeah.
I think the one thing about independent films, which I think is great, is that everybody that's involved in it really wants to be a part of it.
Yeah.
99% of the people that are there are because they love the concept of it, and I think for all the Parisian guys there and the women and the men, they really were big champions of sci-fi.
Yeah,
and because they don't have a lot of sci-fi in Paris and France, so they were all on board and they worked hard, and the crew was outstanding. I had the best time of my life on that.
That's good to hear, because I mean, I love indie films, and I think it's unfair sometimes when people do criticise them, because I've been lucky enough to talk to a few guys in your business now, especially those that have done indie films, and it's what you've just said there is repeated a lot, in that people are in this because they want to do it. There's no money in indie films. There's very little, profit. But people are doing it because they want to do it, and it's a job that they give everything to. And I think it's sometimes unfair when indie films get a bit of a rap for whatever, and I think it's a bit sad that sometimes they look down upon. I think maybe
absolutely, yeah.
But
I don't know why, because I always say anybody can make $100 million movie. Yeah. I'm convinced anybody could.
Yeah.
Because you'd have the right DPs, you'd have the right first ADs, assistant directors, you'd have everybody, you'd have the top of the top, and then they usually would set everything up, and you come in and you say, "Okay, action." Yeah. Right. Cut, and you would maybe talk to the actors. I mean, obviously, I'm dumbing it down a little bit, but I think with independent films, it's you've got a lot of people are wearing many different hats, and to try and pull it together. And oh wow, we've only got one table, so we got to crash this table. We got to smack, go through this table. So we got to make sure that the rehearsals are right and that you don't mess up, and you can't just keep reshooting. And sometimes you have that's the beauty of independent films too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have these little quirks that don't work, but it's part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather watch a Virtual Revolution than a Transformers myself, because the Transformers, and you'd probably say, no, I'd love to be in that, would be, absolutely fine. But in terms of watching it, they always leave me cold. The big budget films, because, like I say, maybe anybody could do it. I don't know, but I think it's easier, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's I mean, independent films are so hard to get done. The great thing is you have creative control.
Yeah.
Usually, so that's the bonus of doing an independent film. But you're very limited financially, and and talent wise too. But usually the actors tend to be pretty good because there's a lot of actors that love these projects. And I've always done indie films and stuff. I've always liked to be a part of it. So this was a great opportunity for me as far as being a leading man on a feature, and was critically acclaimed. So I have nothing but positive things to say about the movie.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it, and I have highly recommended it. I think.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's a great piece of work. You're very good. I'm not just saying that to your face. I've said it to other people as well. It looks great. The dialogue's great. I forget the Blade Runner thing because people often compare it. But what I liked about Virtual Revolution, the way it ends is I won't give it away for anybody that hasn't seen it, but it's not what you expect, is it? The ending, it's it's a surprise.
And that's what I loved about it too. I knew that was going to stick with people, so I thought because it wasn't the typical Hollywood ending, I guess, which people have grown to expect. I think it's great, and that's part of the French flair. I think that's part of the Guy's idea, and I think that's what makes it work.
I've watched it a number of times. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and I'll probably watch it again. I think it's excellent. Can I quickly ask you about X-Files? Because you're in the opening episode of the new series. That's obviously. I don't know whether or not anything was cut out of that role. I don't want this to sound facetious because it's not meant facetious at all. But did you have any dialogue that was cut out of that?
No, there was no dialogue. And when they approached me about it, I was in between shooting Deadpool and the 100.
Right.
And I had literally a 2-week window, and the stunt coordinator I knew, and Chris Carter I've met a few times, and they were thinking about me for something else, and then all of a sudden they said, well, we need someone that can, it's a hard role to play as far as with no dialogue and to still be menacing and creepy without necessarily looking that way, that the first person you see, oh, that's got to be a killer, or that's got to be and so they asked me if I'd be willing to do it, and I said, well, these are my dates. I don't think the dates will work. I said, actually, it fits right in, and then I said, sure, absolutely. And to have a chance to work with Chris Carter, for me was a thrill, and I really wanted to, and I ended up spending a lot of time with Chris. It was just him and I a lot of times.
Yeah. So envious. I mean, I'm such a big X-Files fan, and obviously back in the original series and the reincarnations, it's been so good to see it back again. And even though that you almost did kill Gillian Anderson, I mean,
and it was fun too, because David and I had a good time. And Jillian, I didn't spend much time with her. Just, obviously, most of the time was
just with your hand around the throat. That was a bit the only time that you spent.
But yeah, and it was hilarious because that was literally the first. Hi, how are you? And so I'm going to straddle you here. I'm going to put my hands on your neck. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. Great.
God, man, that's such a what a great job. What about the future then? Because obviously, am I right in saying there's a new thing? I was looking at IMDb, and there's something, a series called, is it Court?
Yes.
That you're working on now. Ward Avery, the character you play in this, yeah?
Yeah, Ward Avery, and he is basically a DEA agent back in the 70s, where we tried to make him more, I wouldn't say a cowboy, but, he's in a suit and stuff, but back then there was sort of this mix from the official police guys that were like, clean shaven.
Right.
And we decided to make him, there were more rebels, I guess, back when the DEA agencies, drug enforcement agency started. It was more of a, these guys were a little more wild. So we tried to keep that. I think it works. It's a stylized show set in the 70s. Lots of fun to shoot. The dialogue was great. It's based on a novel. And it premieres on Monday in Canada. So
when is it for wider release? Then is that going to be Netflix or what, or is it on terrestrial or what?
It's a great question, and I'm going to find all this out. I'm flying to Toronto on Friday, so I was going to get all that information then. But I'll keep you posted.
Okay, all right, that'd be good. Because I've seen a couple of things I think you may have posted on Twitter or Facebook with a couple of stills from it. It looks good. I like the 70s thing, being a child of the 70s. So have you had to have the wig or the flares or that?
Hair. That was my hair, and they basically, it was a lot of blow drying and a lot of I mean, my hair is buzzed right now because of Deadpool and the 100. But
okay.
But yeah, they let it grow, and it was fun. It was for me to be in hair for like a half an hour is pretty fun. But they literally, flipped it back and they feathered it. It was pretty fun. And I can't believe we used to do that. We actually used to do that.
The 70s, man. I mean, it literally is a different time. But I look back to the 70s. It was just weird. It was great, but incredibly weird to grow up during that time with punk and everything else, and all that stuff. So, what are the plans for the future then? What have you got? You're flying to Toronto and all this stuff. What's the next? What's the next few months hold for you?
Well, I don't know. A couple of things, ironically enough, that I had meetings for and auditions for this week that went well, and I'm pinned for a couple of them, but I can't say how. We're negotiating on one of them right now.
Okay.
And I can't really say what it is because it's a moot point if it doesn't work out.
Sure.
But and I've got I'll be a part of Deadpool as well, the new Deadpool.
Yep.
And the 100 this year. And then we'll see what's next. I'm looking for the next one.
I'm looking. I can't wait for Deadpool. I must admit, that's very exciting.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be good, though. I really think it's going to be a good one.
Right. Well, listen, I've taken up enough of your time. I've got to thank you. I felt like a stalker for the last 2 or 3 weeks, trying to pin you down to a day, and it's like, oh my god, that UK guy again is on the thing. But I do appreciate it. I really appreciate it, and you've been so generous and very nice refusing me every other day to go to your auditions and that, and so I'll expect maybe a cut of any part that you get, because I think I've probably got you at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, sounds good.
Listen, Mike, I've loved seeing you on the stuff. I love Virtual Revolution. Wish you all the best. I hope you keep popping up. And
before I forget, Project Eden, another one, another independent feature I did.
Okay.
Project Eden with. I think you'll really enjoy that one as well.
Is that recently been done? Is that out yet? Or?
Yeah, it's. I think it's out. We had a limited theatrical release this year in December, I believe.
Right.
And it's out in Australia, and it might be in the UK as well.
All right. Okay. I'll see if I can get a screen of that maybe and get that on the website and get that talked about. Project Eden. Okay. I'll look out for that. Right. You enjoy your day. As I say, appreciate the time that you've given me, and good luck in everything you do. And I'll look forward to maybe speaking to you again. Maybe once we can tie you down again. All right, man.
Thank you for your patience, man.
It's not a problem. You take care, mate. All right. Okay.
We'll see you. Bye, Stuart.
All right, man. Bye-bye.